Fight of the night contender coming up this weekend in my favorite or maybe second favorite division in all of MMA at bantamweight. We have Leo Manaboi Martinez taking on the Heat, Ronnie Lawrence. And listen, he's better than the movie. I didn't enjoy it. But
what?
I didn't like the movie The Heat. But I can tell you...
The bank robbery one?
The one with Melissa McCarthy?
You're talking about the wrong Heat. One of the greatest heist movies ever is called Heat.
We're talking about different movies. But when we're focused on this fight, this is an absolute barn burner. Because for Ronnie Lawrence, this is one of those guys that has very unorthodox striking. He can throw very well in combination. But the way that he gets his bread buttered is with his takedowns. And he is relentless at getting them. And if you liked a guy like Jailton Almeida last weekend, Ronnie Lawrence is one of those guys. And I have it written down here. I mean, on Dana White's Contender Series, he was a big underdog against Jose Johnson, who would end up losing that fight, and then winning a fight, and then fighting Mana Martinez, and then getting knocked out really, really quick. But in the fight against Johnson, it was, listen, Ronnie Lawrence, he can work his wrestling, but Johnson is way bigger, and he's going to be able to knock him out, and he's going to be great. Ronnie Lawrence went 12 of 17 on his takedown attempts, and it was absolutely amazing. And Mana Martinez, again, 2 fights later, knocked him out in 32 seconds. So how good was Jose Johnson, really? But Ronnie Lawrence follows that up with his UFC debut. And against Vince Cachero, who's a decent wrestler, very well-rounded, 8 of 9 on takedown attempts for a third-round TKO win. Lawrence has had a weird run since then, because that last fight, you might think of it as, oh man, like, Ronnie Lawrence, he's a great prospect, and he is. But that fight was in February of last year. He was booked to fight in July. A fight fell out. Then he got another fight against Trevin Jones. Then, if you go in Topology, it says there was a botched weight cut. So I had to really look into it, because if you just say botched weight cut, that can mean anything. Ronnie Lawrence, so his management said on the MMA Hour, he was able to make weight successfully backstage. He got up, and then he cramped right up. And it just didn't work out for him. Went to the hospital, went through some tests. He was all right. But even then, like he was supposed to fight in July, and now we're here in February of 2022. He gets a good opportunity taking on Mana Martinez, who was knocking guys dead until he made it into the UFC. Then he has a bunch of opponent changes, just like you had Ronnie Lawrence. Trevin Jones was actually one of those opponents. He ends up taking on 41-year-old Guido Canetti, the southpaw pride of Argentina. And in that fight, Mana Martinez loses the first round in a way where I went, man, where was the hype that I saw in this guy? Like, I get it. I mean, he lost to, Draco Rodriguez on Dana White's Contender Series, but there's got to still be some momentum here. And Martinez missed weight for that fight, too. You got to note that. He weighed 140.5. He had just lost his head coach from Metro Fight Club, Saul Solis, because he's in the camp with Adrian Yanez. And it was really heavy on his heart. He ends up winning by split decision because Adelaide Bird saw the second round for Guido Canetti, which was kind of insane. But when it really came down to it, he was incredibly emotional after that fight, and it must have been really, really tricky on him. So coming into this fight, Mana Martinez, really good boxing backwards and forwards, which is interesting to see. And once he gets to the mat, he can mix it up. Ronnie Lawrence is one of those guys, man. Like, his takedowns are crazy. So I think this is going to be a great fight.
Do you remember that song from every NHL game where it's like, tick, 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 boom?
They don't say tick that many times.
Either way, Mana Martinez fights like that song. You're just sort of waiting for something to happen until it does. And when he does decide to hit boom, oh my goodness, the results are absurd. But this will be a really interesting fight. And there are a number of fights like this on this card where it's okay, what's going to win? The consistent game of Ronnie Lawrence, his takedown heavy game plan, his just overall grappling, or can Mana Martinez go out there and shock the world and get one of those crazy, 10,000 retweet Twitter highlights? Both of those things are very possible in this fight. It'd be really interesting, though, to see what happens if Ronnie Lawrence can get a takedown early in this fight and really kind of establish his presence as the superior grappler. Because if you can make Mana Martinez sort of question his own striking ability, you're going to make him at least less likely to throw his own strikes. And I think Ronnie Lawrence can have a great ton of success just pressuring Mana Martinez, but being intelligent about it. Because if you're constantly just walking forward on a guy like Martinez and not shifting up the way that you do it, that's when he will be able to set up one of those big shots that puts you out. But if Lawrence can almost do the Martin Vettori game plan where it's okay, I'm going to wrestle to hide my head and then try to finish all my takedown attempts, I really do think Lawrence can maybe not get himself into that top tier prospect category, but I do think a lot more people will be talking about it because, and I would like to get your opinion on this, when we do like the 5-on-ins and stuff, I know it's very like applicable to Tapology because they show it, but when you're on a 5-fight win streak, people start taking you a lot more serious than when you're on a 4-fight or a 3-fight. Like once you do get, okay, he is on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC, people start taking you a lot more serious after that.
Well, that's it. For Ronnie Lawrence's last loss was Steve Garcia over with Bellator. He took a long time off between the Garcia fight and his next fight against Michael Ricketts. And if you look at it for Martinez, his last loss was by submission to Draco Rodriguez on Dana White's Contender Series a year and 4 months ago. Some big wins over Casey Jones and Jose Johnson on Dana White's looking for a fight. I don't believe the Nelk Boys were there, and that's the only Nelk Boys reference for this entire show.
I still don't even really know who they are.
They're the Full Send guys. I'm pretty sure they're Canadian like us.
Right.
But when it comes to that, maybe they'll have us on someday. You never know. But when it comes to this fight and the odds for this fight, Mana Martinez open to plus 230, still roughly there. For Ronnie Lawrence, about a minus 280 favorite. And if we have a look over on Tapology for the total votes, I'm not going to ask because I'm excited just to see. Surprised us, it is to you. Oh man, 723 total votes, 82% Lawrence, 80% by decision. For the 18% that are Martinez, 66% by decision, 23% by knockout. Hey, Tapology voters, I'm Mana Martinez. He's only ever won one fight by decision. It was against Guido Canetti, and it was a weird one. I don't think he's going to win by decision. I think if it's going to be Ronnie Lawrence on the way in. Good spinning back kick from Mana Martinez. That was one of my big ones. And a really good breadth of strikes. He can throw from a lot of different angles, and he can really string together combinations. And he's got a lot of power for a guy in this division as long as he makes the bantamweight limit. So I like Ronnie Lawrence. I think he is one of those prospects at 135 right now. I think he's really stringing it together. I have him winning this fight, and I can't wait to see, regardless of who wins, who they match these guys with up next, because like the Nathaniel Woods, the Casey Kennys, like where are we? I think we're right there.
Bantamweight's so good that their borderline top 15 guys could have their own top 15. That's how good this weight division is right now. No, I couldn't agree more. I just like the steadier game out of Ronnie Lawrence in this. And listen, does that mean Mana Martinez could go out there, throw a head kick in the first 30 seconds and win? Of course he could. He has that kind of power. But when you break down fights, you normally want to pick the guy who is the most skilled. And I think Ronnie Lawrence is the most skilled.
Me and the much smaller, whiter Chidi and Joe Kawani are going with Ronnie Lawrence to get the win in this fight. Let us know down below in the comment sections who you have, because this should be an absolute banger. We get some big time fights up at the top of this card. Lewis taking on Tai Tuivasa. Maybe there's a title shot on the line there. And in the main event, it is for the title. You've got Adesanya defending against Whittaker. It's the second time they shall fight. Let's keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.